Hey guys, it's Joe Madden here of the Joe Madden Sports Show. I'm joined by Brian Noe, host of the Countdown to the Kickoff on Fox Sports Radio. Brian, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Joe. It's good to be with you.
Yeah, it's just so exciting to have you here. I can't wait to hear about your story into the industry, as well as your show, everything that you have going on. Let's hear about this concert you went to. We were talking about it off air. I think you need to give the viewers a little bit of information.
That's good. Yeah, I hope you have a heavy metal fan audience over here. But yeah, it was a metal show last night. It was Lamb of God. It's funny. I'll tell you briefly. I went to a sports bar on Sunday with my dad, and I met one of my friends there, and he's a heavy metal guy. And he was like, Hey, Lamb of God is in town. I'm in South Bend. That's where I'm from. And they were playing in Indianapolis. So I thought I missed the show. I thought it was on Sunday. I checked it out. It was on Monday. And so I know one of the guitar players and was like, dude, you have time to hang? And so he did. And he hooked me up with some passes. And so I got to hang with those guys, see the show. And Travis Denning, we were talking about this. I don't know much about country outside of like Johnny Cash and like the big names. So I don't know much of what's going on, but apparently this guy has a #1 hit after a few from a couple of years ago, I think. Yeah. But he's a big metal guy. He loves heavy metal. He's seen Lamb of God like 10 times. So he was hanging out with those guys. It was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Great way to spend a Monday evening there instead of the Snorefest on the football field last night. Well, at least the first half anyway.
I was watching it on my phone, and I was on stage with the Lambs. Yeah, I call them the Lambs, and I'm like, I can't be that guy who's just on my phone because that's so lame. So I didn't see the second half, but I'll do the condensed version is the way to go. If you don't catch it live, you go condensed like 40 minutes and see play. It's
absolutely
really cool. Yeah,
definitely a great way to watch it. Let's jump into yourself. Now, I love your Twitter bio. It says son, brother, uncle. Family must mean a lot to you to have that as the first part of your bio.
Yeah. It's family's everything. It's what I care about the most for sure. And I've got 2 nephews. It's a trip, Joe. It's crazy because they're like grown now. I have flashbacks to when they were little kids all the time. And I call him Mini Matt. So my sister's husband, her name is Matt. And so Matthew, I've always called Mini Matt, and it's just stuck. So Mini, he's not Mini anymore. He's 19. He's in college. Ty is 17. So it's crazy. They're almost 20-year-old kids now. It's wild.
That is crazy. So do you come from a heavy sports family?
You know what's funny is I've had this running joke with my sister because she knows nothing and she doesn't care one little tiny bit about sports. Yeah. So every now and then I'm trying to think of something off my head where she might not know who LeBron James is or I don't know, something like that. And I'm like, how are we related? So absolutely. I got it from my dad. My dad was definitely into sports. He's from Alton, Illinois. He was huge into the St. Louis Cardinals, loved baseball. And so growing up in South Bend, Notre Dame football was a big deal. So I got it from my dad's side. My mom liked it mostly because of me. And my sister just doesn't care. So I wouldn't say a huge sports family.
So on Thanksgiving Day, she does not have the games on.
No, she could not care less about what's going on. And I don't know. It's wild to me how we can be so polar opposites. We love each other like crazy. Yeah. We've always gotten along, but man, that interest, it's there for me and not for her.
So growing up, did you play sports as well?
Yeah, I played football for a long time. That's my main love. I adore football. I played baseball for a lot of years, but I would always later on, I always had a football injury. I had 5 surgeries, like a couple of knees, couple of shoulders, 1 thumb. So it seemed like toward the end, I played in high school and a little bit of college, not much, but toward the end, it always seemed like I had a football injury. And so I'm like, sorry, baseball, I'm not going to be healthy enough.
Yeah, that is such a struggle. Now, where did the interest come to talk about sports then?
You know, what's crazy is I never really thought about it. I initially went to a small D2 school to play football, and that wasn't working out. So I transferred to Ball State. So I
Mhm.
graduated from Ball State, and I was into music. My minor was classical guitar, actually.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And so I moved when I graduated college, I moved out to LA, and I was just going to play in bands, which I did. I played in a
Yeah.
couple of like heavy metal bands, and we're playing shows at the Whiskey and stuff like that. And it was just going to take too long for me to get established. I remember going to one of the bands, I went to practice, and the guy was like, "Oh man, sorry, I missed practice, man. My girl was acting up." And I'm like, wow, my future is in this dude's hands, like
Yeah.
literally. And I'm like, it's just not going to work out. So I had been listening to sports radio at the time, and I was getting into it more and more. I really liked it. I always loved sports. If I didn't play, I didn't know what I was going to do. And so sports radio got a little bit more popular, and I moved from LA to Indianapolis, and I ran into a college friend of mine, and he had a brother who was a sales guy at a station in South Bend, and they were
Okay.
starting a local show, and they needed a producer / on-air guy. And so I applied for it, got it, and then just started to work my way up, going from place to place.
So what was that feeling like, Brian, the first time that mic got put in front of you and you were live on air?
It's funny. It's a great question because we were doing this show in South Bend, and we
Yeah.
had this guy on, David Haw. He was a writer for, I believe it was the Chicago Tribune at the time, and he later became a Chicago sports radio host. But I had what stands out to me. I had the biggest fear. I was so scared that I was going to ask whatever question, and he was going to stop and be like, "Why would you ask me that? That's the dumbest question I've ever heard." I don't know why that was in my head. I asked him whatever question it was,
Yeah.
and he answered it like it was any question, because that's exactly what it was. And I'm like, I don't even know why I had that in my head, but that was one of my fears. Was it was this random interview with this guy, David Haw. It went totally fine. And
Yeah.
I'm sure you can relate. You have
Okay.
those little hurdles and you jump over it and you're like, oh, it's totally fine. I don't know why that was a fear to begin with.
Yeah, but I've been on the side where I was interviewing an ex-athlete, and he did not like the question, and
Oh,
he
man.
hung up the phone on radio. And I was like, oh, wow, like I felt so terrible. So I understand that fear. Just don't
Yeah.
hurt me here, Brian.
Can you say who it was? Who was it? Do you want to name names?
I don't think I should name names.
Okay, all right, that's fine.
He would, but he's elderly now. He's in his 80s, so he wanted his supper, and so he decided to go.
I have a semi-funny story. It got me thinking. So Tim McDonald,
Yeah.
he played in the NFL a lot of years, played for the Niners, played for the Arizona Cardinals. I did radio in Fresno, California for a little bit, and he was a high school football coach at a place called Edison. And
Okay.
so it was just me and him on the field after the game. And there was a safety in the game, and Edison lost the game. And I just asked him, I was like, "Hey, coach, like, were you surprised it ended up being a safety? You called a passing play on like the 7-yard line. There's plenty of room. Were you surprised it was a safety?" And he goes, "Stupid question." And he goes on to answer the question. I'm sitting there like, I swear he said stupid question, but then he just answered it like normal. And so I asked him another question, and he just walked off, and he just started mumbling like, "He's freaking like media guys," or whatever. That's the closest thing I have to what you were talking about.
Yeah, it's an incredibly interesting industry to be in, for sure, Brian. Tell me about how you got started on your show and working with Fox Sports Radio.
Yeah, so gosh, so this goes back to 2013.
Okay.
I had left my job in Albany, New York, and I was looking for a new gig. And so I try to get in front of people. I try to do a lot of in-person networking. And so I had gone to Dallas to meet Bruce Gilbert. I had met him before, but Bruce was a big wig, and he hired Colin Cowherd. And so I just wanted to get in front of him and just talk to him. So I did. I drove down or flew down, I can't remember, and talked to Bruce. And then he called me up out of the blue a couple of months later, and he was like, "Hey, I recommended you for something, but I don't want to get your hopes up." And then the rest of the call was about he had this guy that he was thinking about talking up for the job I just left.
Okay.
And so it was all about the position I just had and about his guy. And I'm like, what does that have to do with me? So anyway, but he ended up asking me months after that phone call to fill in around Thanksgiving, around Christmas time. This was 2013.
Yeah.
And I filled in. I did 6 shows, and that was that. And I give Greg Bergman a lot of credit. So Greg was a producer at Fox at the time.
Okay.
He's now the assistant program director in LA at ESPN 710. And he kept bugging me. He was like, you need to talk to Bruce and say, hey, hire me for this weekend overnight shift.
Yeah.
At first, I'm like, I don't want to beg for a job. Like, if he wants to hire me, he'll hire me. And Greg kept on me. He's like, dude, you need to talk to Bruce. You really do. And so I did. And Bruce hired me for the weekend overnight thing. And so that's how I got started. Was if Greg didn't tell me to do that, I don't know that Bruce would have hired me. I have no idea.
So Greg is definitely owed a steak dinner at some point.
Yeah, it certainly is. Don't let him hear this. But yes, he is absolutely owed a steak dinner.
I love it. Okay, so when we look at everything that you had going on, what was your aha moment where you're like, I've made it? Was it when you did those 6 weeks and then, or 6 shows filling in and then you got offered something permanent, or what was it?
Honestly, I've never felt like that. Never. I don't know what it is. It's kind of my mentality where I just think of what could be better.
Yeah.
What else could there be going forward? That's how I think. And I don't know what that is, Joe. I'm the opposite of someone who has a big head. I'm the exact opposite. If anything, I have to be like, stop beating yourself up. Because after a show, I'll immediately think, oh, I could have said this better. Oh, I should have thought of this point. Oh, I could have cracked a joke here. That's how I think.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I kind of, Michael Irvin said this one time, the Cowboys' old receiver. He said, you got to celebrate the wins. He was talking about celebrating first downs. And he's like, if you don't do that along the way, you're never going to have fun. You're never going to have, a good time. And I have to remind myself that constantly. But I've never sat back and like, man, I made it. National radio now. I'm always like, why am I not weekdays? Why don't I have a national gig on the weekend? Why don't I have a major market gig weekdays? That's how I think. So I'm the opposite of that.
Okay, so that leads us to, what are your goals moving forward then, Brian?
I don't have anything specific. I think when you're in sports radio, you just get so conditioned to riding the wave. You can't dictate the wave. You just have to adapt to it. And that's how I am. So I would love to do national weekdays. I'd love to do major market weekdays. But to have like a specific market, or I really don't have that. I would just like to do something as big as possible and have fun. It's not about, you could be in the biggest market and be miserable. Yeah. I think it's about the combination of having fun and trying to do something big if that's what you're trying to accomplish.
Absolutely. So what advice would you give to people coming up in this industry that are trying to break their way in?
I would just say hang with it. You have to you got to persevere. It sounds so corny and so cliche, but I mean, you might not make a lot of money at first, but if you hang with it, you can make good money in the business. You can have some good opportunities come your way. But unless, I don't know, you've got a parent that owns a radio station or something, like it's going to be tough sledding for a little ways for something. Like either you're not going to get the job you desire right away. You're not going to get the pay that you want right away. You're going to have to do some jobs you don't want to do. It's just, you got to make it through that time. And I would also say, just crush whatever job you have, and the opportunities that you really want will come your way. But if you're just eyeing what you want, if you're like, I'm eyeing a home run, and you're like, I really don't care about these singles or doubles, I think that's just the wrong approach. It's just crush your role, and they'll give you those opportunities. It's not going to work the other way if you're only doing like a 50% job with whatever your role is. They're never going to give you the bigger thing if that's the case.
Definitely. Amazing advice there. You still playing guitar at all?
You know, it's funny. I hate to say this, Joe. I'm aging. Okay. I'm an old man in front of you. Like I got a haircut today. I know I dye my hair to this day, Joe. I was going gray. Look at these sides. Look at them. I was starting to turn gray when I was in high school.
Okay, but guys can pull it off.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. I'm still not ready to be gray yet. I had a girlfriend years ago where I just cut my hair and I'm like, I don't feel like dyeing it. I was like, how do I look? She goes, you look dusty. And I'm like, I don't want dusty. I'm not ready for that. So anyway, the whole point is I was working out a lot. I was doing all these push-ups and pull-ups, and I jacked my arm up, Joe. And my sister, she's a physical therapist. She thinks some tendonitis going on in my right arm. And so I haven't been able to play this whole year. It's September already. I used to play 8-12 hours a day. No problem.
Yeah.
And I haven't touched it all year. I can still play, but once my arm is set, I'll be diving back into it for sure.
Well, once your arm is set, I'd love to have you back on the show. Play us a couple of tunes for sure, Brian. Where can everyone find you if they're looking to follow you and your shows?
That's awesome. Yes, I would love to do that. Just hit me up on Twitter at The No Show. I spell my last name Noe. My Instagram got hacked. Again, old. I have no idea how to get it back. So just hit me up on Twitter. It's some other guy's account now on Instagram.
Yeah, mine got hacked too. So I feel you on that, Brian. Thank you so much for joining me. You guys, make sure you go give him a follow. All the links will be below this video after. Have a great day, Brian. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Yes. Thanks for having me. A lot of fun, Joe. You're awesome.
Awesome. Let's do it again soon. Thank you, guys. Bye now.